I have to say that this winter was better than the one last year, but the end of February looked like this. It was warm outside, and let me tell you that I didn't like it. Winter is my favorite season, and between late December and early March, I expect to see this sight. But that is not always the case because of something called climate change. Now, I'm glad that the world is united in fighting against this thing. Well, mostly. One of the most vocal critics of climate change is still Prager University. And long ago, I promised to retort their stance on the worst problem the world is faced with. All their precious videos are quite old, so there's no point in revising those, but they basically repeat themselves in this video. Now, I'm really curious to see who they chose as the host for this commentary.
Have you ever heard of unobtainium? It's the magical energy mineral found on the planet Pandora in the movie Avatar. It's a fantasy in a science fiction script. But environmentalists think they found it here on Earth in the form of wind and solar power. They think all the energy we need can be supplied by building enough wind and solar farms and enough batteries.
Well, it is estimated that it would take 5.4 billion 350 watt solar panels to power the world. If you want to put that in perspective, that would cover 115,000 square miles. All you need is some sunny terrain, and there you go. Now, whether this is feasible or not is another story, but I will get to that in a moment.
The simple truth is that we can't, nor should we want to, not if our goal is to be good stewards of the planet. To understand why, consider some simple physics realities that aren't being talked about. All sources of energy have limits that can't be exceeded. The maximum rate at which the sun's photons can be converted to electrons is about 33%. Our best solar technology is at 26% efficiency. For wind, the maximum capture is 60%. Our best machines are at 45%. So we're pretty close to wind and solar limits. Despite PR claims about big gains coming, there just aren't any possible.
The way Prager University explains this is a little misleading. Solar and wind are not the sole sources of energy for something. They're actually used as supplements in addition to another source of energy to decrease the amount used from that main power source. If your house, for example, is powered by oil, solar panels on your roof can reduce the amount of oil needed to power it. In essence, you're using less oil and therefore you're impacting the environment less.
And wind and solar only work when the wind blows and the sun shines, but we need energy all the time.
That's why you store power in their batteries and recharge them when the sun comes out or when the wind blows. And that's what he touches on right now.
The solution, we're told, is to use batteries. Again, physics and chemistry make this very hard to do. Consider the world's biggest battery factory, the one Tesla built in Nevada. It would take 500 years for that factory to make enough batteries to store just 1 day's worth of America's electricity needs. This helps explain why wind and solar currently still supply less than 3% of the world's energy, after 20 years and billions of dollars in subsidies.
Again, check my previous comment.
Putting aside the economics, if your motive is to protect the environment, you might want to rethink wind, solar, and batteries because, like all machines, they're built from non-renewable materials. Consider some sobering numbers.
So this is the point where he explains that these renewable sources require materials that would damage the environment, becoming the exact opposite of what environmentalists are trying to do. While that is true, he still tries to position this debate as if environmentalists want to have a world solely run on wind and the sun. Like I said, this is not the case. These sources are just an additional component. Renewable energy is about finding any and every source of energy so we can help sustainability. That is what I want to touch on next and use it to respond to Prager's argument, as it shows where their true loyalties lie.
We might want to reconsider our almost inexhaustible supply of hydrocarbons, the fuels that make our marvelous modern world possible. And technology is making it easier to acquire and cleaner to use them every day. The following comparisons are typical and instructive. It costs about the same to drill one oil well as it does to build one giant wind turbine. And while that turbine generates the energy equivalent of about 1 barrel of oil per hour, the oil rig produces 10 barrels per hour. It costs less than 50 cents to store a barrel of oil or its equivalent in natural gas, but you need $200 worth of batteries to hold the energy contained in one oil barrel. Next time someone tells you that wind, solar, and batteries are the magical solution for all our energy needs, ask them if they have an idea of the cost to the environment. Unobtainium works fine in the movies, but we don't live in the movies. We live in the real world. I'm Mark Mills, Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Prager University.
Exactly. They like to promote oil. That's the main problem that environmentalists and energy workers campaign against. Oil is a finite resource. It will not last forever, and when we run out, there will be a larger energy crisis than ever seen before. Not to mention the much bigger environmental damage it causes to the environment than Prager University is willing to portray. The best forms of sustainable and renewable energy that exist come from hydro, nuclear, and thermal power plants. Many countries, including large industrial countries, have over half of their energy needs met through these means. While I do believe that we should have more solar and wind farms, the biggest supplier should be these three giants. If Prager University wants to talk about sustainable and cost-effective energy, they definitely should mention these three. But considering that PragerU is sponsored by oil fracking companies, I don't think they intend on doing so.